Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Raise the Bar with Real Estate. I am Pasha Kane, and I have a really special guest today, Pimley, who is a Renaissance short-term rental expert, as well as a partner in Fairway Mortgage with Fairway Mortgage Lending. And today we're going to go into some of really the advantages of having a short-term rental. And I would say Kylan is really an expert operator and marketeer and has done a fantastic job elevating her properties. And I think she's going to be able to share some fantastic nuggets with how, if people are thinking about getting in this space, of how they can be set up for success. So, Kylan, why don't you introduce yourself and maybe talk about how you got into the short-term rental space?
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Kasha. I appreciate it. Well, I started in property management about 19 years ago in long-term property management. We have a few still in the White Salmon, Washington area in the Gorge. And then in about 2018, we bought our first it was our second home that we wanted to use personally. My husband and I are both from the Gorge, so we go there quite frequently and wanted our place of our own to be. And we thought we would just Airbnb it when we weren't using it. And then that home took off, and we realized that it was very popular and that there were ways to host an Airbnb beyond just setting it up and forgetting about it. So I was gladly forced to shift from my property management experience from looking at everything through a landlord lens to a hospitality lens with short-term rentals. And that sparked the 2018 house sparked another one that's on my parents' property that is a smaller studio that is located within my dad's ceramic art studio. So it's called The Studio. And then that just kind of spiraled. I met a fantastic group of people through a mastermind group. And they're just kind of my people from all over the country. And we bounce ideas off of each other and take hosting to the next level with using systems and software and checking in on our listing health by using software that ranks how healthy our listings are and what guests want and what they don't want. And we try to anticipate travelers' needs before they even know themselves. So,
Wow, wow, lot to unpack there. So I think something you said is very true. Is that setting it and forgetting it is really an outdated strategy because there is so much competition right now in short-term rentals, and it has become a darling investment category for a lot of people. And it's great, to have a second home. You and I have a share a similar passion in the space as we're both investors in short-term rentals. But I think something you touched on, two things you really touched on that I think is really important to come back to is that it is a hospitality business and that you have to be really ahead of what your ideal guest or avatar is wanting and thinking. Can you talk a little bit about how do you stay really kind of connected with the consumer, but also like what does it mean to be a hospitality business?
yes, I think the best way that I am able to keep hospitality at the forefront is to stay small. So we have three properties that are short-term rental right now. We're onboarding two more, but those properties are all family and one dear friend. So there are properties that are very special to me. I know them inside and out. I've raised my children at these properties. Um, my husband and I had our bridal shower at one of these properties. So they're very special to me. And I don't have the itch to be a big operator. I want to just stay small so that I can personally visit each property myself. as a business owner, but also as a guest. I like staying in our properties from time to time to get the guest experience and then make little tweaks here and there. So I guess if it's a secret sauce is to stay small and focused inside each property, you know, in intimately, I guess.
I love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's I think definitely guests can feel that personal touch and that they're, being spoken to or that the experiencers really, have them in mind. Um, as I mentioned, the competition is pretty getting pretty strong and in some areas it is saturated. What do you think is your like advantage to keeping your properties top of mind and the algorithms and kind of separating yourself and being a really top bar product?
I would say the way I try to set ourselves apart is to just constantly be educated on what travelers want and what um, Airbnb and VRBO algorithms favor. We're seeing a shift now. I just learned this in the last couple of weeks that pet-friendly properties, which were more desirable generally, the algorithm is now moving away from that into non-pet friendly properties due to things like allergies or the cleanliness. Maybe there were some cleanliness issues in previous stays. So, the travelers get to set the precedent, and the pendulum has now shifted in the pet friendly space from pet friendly is the best to maybe not so much. So I really try to stay up on trends and learning the algorithms and using many software tools to measure and make decisions based on the data and not on anything else. I like to read what travelers are doing and I listen to my guests to understand that. And I think at least in the Gorge, it is a saturated market. There was the Airbnb boom in 2021. I think what we call those revenue years, 21 and 22, those unicorn years where they were hot, and you saw a lot of new listings come up. But I still believe that being a small operator and being in the business every day and listening to guests, and it's me talking to guests every time, it makes a huge difference. And so I think like new Airbnb listings that are either owned or either managed by, a big name that hasn't ever stayed in the property themselves, we get a leg up on listings like that. And so I just try to stay small and really concentrated in the things that matter to guests.
Oh my gosh, I love that. It just feels very, just hearing you talk just feels very personal. And I think to your point, just be able to have a conversation directly with guests like goes a long way versus, just entity who doesn't have any even knowledge of the house. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, we have some automated messaging, of course. Like every time someone books, I can't possibly write out all of the stuff, right? So we have some automations, but in the Gorge, we are a huge destination wedding market. And so with wedding guests, brides, grooms, families, wedding parties, bachelorette stays, bachelor stays, I hop on the phone and I call them and I'm like, what do you need? Because this is really special. And if something goes wrong, I don't want it to be on my watch.
oh my gosh.
So I love picking up the phone. It was hard at first, but I've seen a huge difference in how I've connected with guests and avoided lots of problems and parties, setting expectations on both sides so that everybody has a good experience. So
Gosh, I wish every host had your touch because I don't think I've talked to many too many hosts who've called me. So I appreciate you sharing that and how important that is. And I think
well, they are surprised. I mean, I'll pick up the phone. Sometimes I'll set an appointment, but sometimes I'll just pick up the phone and they're like, "Why is my Airbnb host calling me?" That doesn't usually happen. So,
friendly. Hello.
yeah.
something you touched upon, I think there could be this perception, gosh, is this a full-time job? And we've talked, I know how busy you are. You guys, you and your husband have so many different businesses, investors, full-time mortgage lenders, your short-term rentals, developers, the list goes on. Family, kids on ski
The
team.
slippery slope.
Yeah, but I think you've automated a lot of new systems to really streamline your business. How important is that? And can you talk a little bit about which systems you use?
Yeah, so the first system I implemented was a dynamic pricing tool, which you and I have talked about. I know when we met at that open house, I was playing the lender role at the time. We started talking about short-term rentals and realized we both do the same. And then we brought up Price Labs and this dynamic pricing tool. And that was the first one I implemented, which really changed the game for me because I wasn't pricing right. And when I first started, I was pricing based on, I would look kind of manually at other listings and kind of see, okay, what do they have for amenities? And I would just kind of play it by ear. I was winging it. I wasn't making decisions based on data. I was making decisions based on the perceived value that I thought that house should rent for. Um, so implementing dynamic pricing was huge for me. It really changed the game from it being a second home to now a business. And then we have another software called Rank Breeze that ranks your listings so you can keep up on, again, data driven on your Airbnb listing health. And that measures clicks and conversions and views. You can track changes you make to your listing. So if you have new photos done, you can enter in the date and what you did to change the listing, and then you get a graph. They spit a graph back out at you to see how that has changed views and conversions for that listing. So I don't like driving blind in my businesses. I like to see that what I'm doing and changes that I'm making make a difference. As far as other systems, I use a property management software to keep all the listings on one, so I'm not going in Airbnb and replying in Airbnb or VRBO for the VRBO guests. I have one property management software where I just communicate with guests that way, and implementing automated messaging is important as well. Let's see. I use Breezeway for all of our operations. So our cleaning team, our maintenance teams, our landscape teams, our inspectors, I set myself tasks through there. And that system's really cool because we can use that for our personal home. We can use that for our long-term rental properties as well. And it's essentially a maintenance log. So if we ever sell a property with a short-term rental contract, you have this maintenance log for that property and adds value to your home. So
Wow.
systems are my jam. I can't I can't live without them.
Wow, I definitely learned of a couple that I have to implement myself. So, and just for the listeners, I can't emphasize enough like the pricing algorithms and how important that is. It's essentially if you imagine going to a hotel and prices fluctuate with seasonality and just demand, that's the exact same tool that's being applied to your pricing on your short-term rental and really optimizes the pricing in that market specifically for you. So I can't speak more highly of it. And then also to just having that property manager, channel manager that is the hub, the dashboard for all the other booking platforms like Airbnb, VRBO, booking.com, which it centralizes so you don't go crazy trying to make sure all the calendars
Right.
up. And then the automated messages that is in your tone of voice. It sounds like it's from you, but it just gives the guests that consistent information that they need from check-in details to check out to checking in. So it's just a way to really just streamline the operation side so that you're not in the business 24/7. So how many
Yes.
hours do you think that you spend every week on the business? And I love the word business because it is a business. It really is not a
Yes. Yeah. It started as a hobby, and then I realized very quickly in the first season this was a thing. So, how many hours a week? We're in a mountain market, so it's pretty seasonal. Summers are jam-packed, so in the summer, it's really my full-time job. Um, I'm answering guests. We have midweek bookings, weekend bookings. We do a lot of weddings, wedding stays, not weddings, wedding stays. Um, yeah, so and our regulations are constantly changing too. So um, the regulations in on the Washington side and on the Oregon side are very different. So keeping up with that. Um, I would say in the summer, yeah, it's a 40-hour work week very easily. Right now in January, it's pretty slow with reservations, but I'm using that time again to just read data and reach out to vendors that I would love to work with, establish more relationships. We do have some wedding stays on the books, so I'm making sure that I've called them and reached out to them and they're good to go. So just kind of trying to proactively get ahead of some things in the business. But in off season, it's guest communication, hands-on every day is about maybe 10 hours a week.
Okay. Yeah, so it's definitely manageable for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Off season. And then, people who are kind of on the fence about short-term rentals, about whether they should get into it, and maybe they do have full-time jobs. What advice would you give? Would you say this is an asset class that they should pursue? Or what, just be really honest. What do you
Yeah.
think about today's market for short-term rentals and whether it's a viable investment class?
I think the short-term rental industry is mirroring a lot of what we're seeing in mortgage and real estate, where the professional ones are hanging in there.
Hmm.
And so I would say if someone is looking to get into it, just know that it is a full-time job. And we also, as agents and lenders as well, we have a responsibility to be good stewards of our community and follow the regulation rules. What we're seeing a lot now in our market in the gorge is Airbnbs are being shut down who don't have proper licensing and who are throwing those parties, who aren't watching for those parties, aren't trying to get ahead of it. That's the other system I couldn't live without. I can't believe I forgot to mention it, but I have detection systems in the houses that detect for smoke and noise.
Mm.
So above 80 decibels inside triggers an alert. It sounds like alarm bells going off in our house. But so then it just prevents parties. It prevents neighbors. And I disclose that to all of our guests too. So it really is hands-on. I think in the boom, end of 2020, 2021, a lot of people were like, this is a get rich quick, easy passive income is my favorite word that people use. And it's just so far from that, so far from that. And it shouldn't be, I feel. Um, I feel that it's a little bit, um, what's the word? Negligent. It's negligent to your community. It could be negligent to your guests. Short-term rental safety is another passion of mine. I'm a licensed short-term rental safety inspector, so I do that. All our properties are certified to be safe with fire extinguishers and proper handrails and all of these things that a lot of people don't think about. And there's also cost to it, right? So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I would just say just someone looking to get into the industry, just be ready.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it can be big. It's so fun though. I really, really love it. My husband and I have been involved in real estate since we were 19. And this is really the fun part for me. Lending's fun too. There's different short-term rentals are fun, long-term rentals are fun, everything in their own way. But this to me is I really, really love it. So
Yeah, yeah, and I think just with your marketing background and your hospitality background, it just seems like such a great fit. And just as a key takeaway, you know, it's great to have a vacation home in places you like to travel, but it
Mhm.
does come with some work and due diligence and responsibility there. So, think just anybody who is thinking about short-term rental, just be eyes wide open. And if they don't want to run it as a
Yes.
business, but as a hobby, that's okay too. But then the expectations should really be managed that, that it probably is not going to meet your cash flow expectations. So,
Right. Right. Yeah, and cash flow expectations now are different than they used to be. And so when you're looking to buy a new short-term rental and you ask for that P&L, do not rely on those unicorn year numbers because that's not what you're going to get.
yeah, yeah,
I do love one aspect I do love about our short-term rentals is they're just maintained so much better than any
yeah,
other property that we own because at any moment a guest could walk in and everything has to be perfect all the time.
yep.
We always joke that like if there's a broken laundry basket, it comes and we give it to the teenagers. Like the teenagers have broken laundry baskets, the guests get all the good things.
I know my husband and I laugh. Our definitely our short-term rentals are in better shape and maintained than I think our personal residence.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but
So,
but
mhm,
yeah, it's when every system and everything, it's just optimized and running in perfection. It just gives you that peace of mind because the worst thing is, bad consumer experience, but also like safety reasons.
absolutely. Yeah.
And in
Yep.
one bad review, and maybe you can talk to reviews, is like it really can, really hurt your business. So you're almost as good as
Yes.
the last review.
Yeah. I might have an unpopular opinion about reviews from a guest perspective or from a host perspective. I think we can all agree that the review system is fairly broken. And I mean that by one example I'll just give you is we had a wedding stay and we had the phone call and they didn't disclose information in those calls and in those messages, which caused them to not be able to host their wedding at
Oh,
our house.
oh wow.
Yeah. And it was one of those things where they booked months in advance. They signed the rental agreement. They submitted their guest and vehicle registration. They wrote it all out and everything. And then we have one more message, like a couple weeks before they check in, just to remind them of, the gathering rules and the anti-partying rules and policies that Airbnb has. And, um, they just kind of pretended like it was the first time they'd heard this. And it really screwed up their weekend because they were planning a really huge special life event at this property. And the review reflected that experience. And so, an Airbnb it took months. I eventually got it taken down because I was able to show Airbnb how many times we talked about this. And then I recapped the conversation on the phone. Um, but it's hard because if there's a one little thing or one big thing, it's really hard to beat a bad review. Really hard.
It really is. I agree.
And not just from like the business perspective too, but that just does not feel good for me. I tend to think about that kind of stuff for weeks and not be able to let it go because it just sucks. I hate it.
Yeah.
But
Sometimes it's out of your
yeah.
control for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
Oh wow, this has been super insightful. You're just yeah, just a rock star in this space and just
Thank
have so
you.
many words of wisdom. So I know the guests listening will be super just inspired and hopefully more educated. And just before we leave, what would you tell your younger self, something you know now that you as a younger person would have liked to have known? What's some advice?
That is such a loaded question.
I should give you a heads up on that. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Oh my gosh. What would I tell my younger self? This is a quote from Henry Ford, and I say it almost every single day. And I wish I would have like listened to this quote more and applied it. But whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
I love it. I
So
love it.
just think you can, and you're all good.
Oh, that's amazing. It's so true. Remove those
Yeah,
beliefs.
yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you, Kylan. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you, what else you do in the space. And thank you for being a guest on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Take care. Bye.
You too.